Hello, everyone. Welcome to the third episode in the series of our Student Spotlight. Today, we have with us, Ayush. Welcome to the podcast, Ayush.
Hi, it's great to be here.
Yeah. So a little bit about myself again. My name's Oliver. I am the Marketing and Outreach Director at CCIR, PhD candidate in philosophy over at Georgetown, and we're here just to really talk about your project at CCIR, your academic interests, and so if you don't mind, Ayush, start by telling us a little bit about yourself. Where are you based? What grade are you in? A little bit about who you're working with and what your project is about.
Yep. So I am a student really passionate in engineering based in Northern Virginia. And basically, what I'm trying to pursue in the future is more of computer science and engineering and sort of the niche area in between, in between that, which is sort of like emerging machine learning. And so that's like where the project I'm focusing on has been surrounding. So I've been working with Dr. Mahmoud on computer vision research, namely doing with hand on face gesture recognition. So if you think about like doing this or this and how it can mean something in a context, we want to be able to teach a computer to do that.
That's super cool. As I am currently demonstrating, hand on face does seem to express things.
Exactly.
So how did you come up with this project, or what sparked this idea of pursuing this line of research? Because it seems like, is there like sort of ongoing efforts to do this already and you're sort of trying to add to that, or was this sort of something you wanted to do that you came up with?
Yep. So when I started, it was actually the professor and I both like sort of exploring and brainstorming together. I realized that like it's first of all, it's kind of hard to create something new nowadays. So most of the research is building on top of things that already exist. And so Dr. Mahmoud happened to be really focused on computer vision and emotions and hand on face gestures. So we sort of decided to build on top of that together. And personally, I was interested in this because it has huge applications in the future where we start to go towards automation. So I realized that I really want to be exploring this area.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about the brainstorming process between you and Dr. Mahmoud. So you coming in, what did you tell her about like what your interests are and what your directions are, and how did that sort of back and forth process lead you to a concrete research project?
So I actually told her that I was really interested in machine learning, and she said, "Oh, well, I actually do computer vision as a bulk of my research." And I mean, those obviously have huge intersections in machine learning and computer vision. And then from there, we started to look into different ideas. So we looked at like edge detection. We looked at various things that don't have to do with faces. We even looked at like generative design, game theory. But then we realized that the most widely accessible data sets and the most progress to be made is in hand on face gesture recognition. So it was sort of a bouncing ideas around, seeing what's the best area that we could work in. And we found that this is there's a lot of progress to be made here.
That's cool. And so you're doing the one-on-one mentorship program.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about how your program ended up, because the way these one-on-one courses work is that each one is unique, right? And you end up dynamically producing a course with your mentor over the course of the program. And how did your course end up being structured? So have you already moved on to the research component? Was there like a number of weeks where you guys just like did the foundations of machine learning and like explore different topics? What was your experience like then?
Yep. So for me, it was since I already had a bit of a background in machine learning, we started with sort of doing literature reviews. Once we decided the topic, we decided to go through literature review, which is basically, finding what already exists in the space. What is there that we can build on top of? How have previous people done worked on the problem and how can we sort of better that. So that took a few weeks. And then after that point, we sort of, once we had the target and previous work in hand, we were able to start the research process, which is basically going back and forth with how can we add something to the field. So we don't want to just repeat like what other people have done. So that was sort of where we started to get to work as to what can we add, what that's valuable.
And have you gotten to a place where you have a sense of what might be your small contribution to the field?
Yep. So we've gotten to the point where we sort of want to take the hand on face gesture recognition and add that to emotion recognition, and also add like a new architecture, which is basically a way that the machine learning model can learn to the first component. So we sort of want to combine a few pieces of technology and see where we get with that.
That's super cool. I'm really excited to see what comes out of this. This is easily one of the more interesting one-on-one mentorship projects that emerged out of these. And the interesting thing about the one-on-one program is at the beginning of the course, I mean, all our students come in really, really strong, but we sort of never quite know what the project of our students will end up looking like.
Mm-hmm.
Because it depends so much on the fit of the mentor and how the dynamic process of this mentorship unfolds. And in your case, it turned out to be sort of, I don't know if I'm speaking for you, but it sounds like it ended up being a really perfect fit between you and your mentor in terms of your interests, in terms of the research direction you ended up pursuing.
Yeah, it was really a great fit. I mean, obviously at the beginning it was a little new because this is my first time pursuing research, but once I sort of understood the plan that she laid out for me, which is really simple to understand, sort of literature review, research, and then writing the paper, it was pretty simple to follow, and I think it worked pretty well.
Yeah, so tell me a bit about that, because what grade are you in right now?
Oh yeah, I'm a senior, so going to college next year. Yeah.
Okay, so have you already gotten in?
Not yet. The decisions come out in spring, so.
Yeah. Well, just in case you did ED and got it in
Yeah.
really early.
Mm-hmm.
In your high school experience, I
Mm-hmm.
imagine, so have you written like an extensive academic research paper before, or?
Nope, I haven't. This is my first time, so.
Yeah, so tell me a bit about that, about the differences between writing an essay for high school and sort of this. In a lot of the one-on-one mentorships, the papers that end up being produced, I talked with a student last time, Simming, who did a philosophy paper that eventually got published. Um, and it's a super interesting project in the philosophy of trust and its connection to blockchain.
Mm-hmm.
And the level of writing that is required there is actually, I think, ends up exceeding the undergraduate level. I know that in my undergraduate years, I didn't end up writing anything close to what Simon ended up writing until maybe senior year.
Mm-hmm.
Not even then. So tell me about, like, I imagine it's quite a big change, and tell me about how Mala maybe guided you through this and
Yeah.
The differences between high school and CCIR.
Mm-hmm. I think the key difference is like you have to think about the audience here. So for example, like niche topics like blockchain and machine learning, there when you write a paper for that topic, you have to have a broad enough focus so that you can like cast the net of other academics, but you also have to have like a niche aspect so that you're showing your contribution and sort of showing where future papers can go. But in high school, you have like a rather selected target, so it could be for the teacher, where you can assume who's going to read the paper that you write, or it can be too broad. So it could be like you have to write a paper that's on a really general subject, but here you have a specific subject and you have to appeal to multiple groups of people.
Tell me about, like, you said that Mala gave you like a fairly clear plan on how to pursue this research.
Yeah.
How did that figure into your understanding of how to do this specific project?
Yeah. So one of the things that we talked a lot about was, building on top of previous work. And so for me, that meant first implementing what other people have done in the past. So a lot of the times in papers, they don't actually like give you the source code or the data set to what they worked with what they worked on. It's either closed off to them, or it's like implied so that you can implement it on your own. And so for me, that meant I had to like sort of read other papers and try to implement them on my own, as in writing the code, or I had to actually ask the people for their data set. So it was interesting to work with other people in the community where we actually had to request several data sets from previous papers. And so once we got those, it was easy to see how the academic community is actually like really tight knit and webbed. So like we could reach out to people.
Yeah, and I think it differs in different fields, but it sounds like the academics that I'm curious who you reached out to on the one hand, but I'm also surprised to learn that not surprised, but pleased, I suppose, to learn that it sounds like it's a really supportive and helpful community.
Yep. So we reached out to Dr. Bainez, who also works on computer vision research. She does stuff at CMU, for example, and also I think Cambridge. We were able to get a data set which she used in 2 of her papers. And then those papers also actually focused on sort of faces and how can hands add to the situation. So like we use those data sets, and we added our own images to them to sort of make the data sets bigger. And so it's really collaborative. We kind of built on top of her work and her data set, which is really good.
That's super cool. And so just back to your research project a little bit, you said that there are a lot of potential applications for this technology. For someone who's not familiar, could you share a little bit about the future possibilities of this application?
Yeah. So one of them is sort of understanding a situation. So if we think about what computers struggle with nowadays, it's having the same level of understanding as we do. So there's like multiple factors that go into understanding somebody's emotion. Like they could be acting one way and not feeling the same way. So if you think about like, how can a computer discern what's going on? Even if I say this, but I'm not actually surprised, there's other aspects that go into an image. So you have to sort of, that's what we're kind of working on, is giving a computer situational awareness and understanding. So this could be another feature that goes into that. We might not be able to contribute everything at once, but in this case, we're adding hand and face gesture recognition. And this could also be used for, if you think about like conversational AI, or AI that can talk to people via video chats, for example. They can start to recognize conversational cues. Like if somebody's about to talk, they might do a certain gesture, or if somebody is thinking something, they might give you like a pause in between, which is really cool.
Yeah. So that actually reminded me of the reason I was typing is because as you were speaking, it reminded me of a philosophy paper. There's a philosopher called John Hoagland who taught at the University of Pittsburgh and Chicago 10, 20 years ago. And he worked a lot on the philosophy of AI and the philosophy of cognitive science. And he has a paper called Understanding Natural Language, which I'll share with you later. But that sort of is precisely talking about this topic in the early, I think, 1970s or 80s, where he was focusing on where the paradigm of the field was still sort of what's sometimes called, I think, good old-fashioned AI, where you're sort of just feeding your computer like bits of knowledge, and you're supposed to become artificially intelligent via that process, rather than through the machine learning paradigm. And this sort of early philosophical work is trying to say like, no, that will not yield an understanding of natural language that resembles human understanding. For that, you'll need situational awareness, sort of common sense, and all of these things. And he's sort of trying to gesture at what computers would have to look like in order to achieve this. So it's super cool that like there are all these like interdisciplinary connections. I just thought of that. Yeah. So you're a senior who's interested in engineering, artificial intelligence. and the intersections. I'm going to ask a question that uh, you're likely not going to have a super clear answer to, but what do you envision yourself doing in like maybe in college, just in college. So I imagine your majors are fairly set. Um,
Yep, computer science.
cool. But beyond that, do you know anything about like after college? Do you have a hunch? Obviously, things will change. There's
Yep.
no doubt that things will change. But what do you envision yourself doing at the
Yeah,
moment?
so I've always had this passion for like space and sort of I want to apply computer science to space. So space engineer, like space exploration, how can we further that? And the first thought that always comes to my mind is like tech and space organizations. So like if you think about NASA, but also now there's like the private companies like Blue Origin, SpaceX, and a bunch of other new ones like Virgin Galactic.
Yeah.
Being able to work at one of those is sort of where I want to go right after college, maybe even intern there during college. And I hope to not just be like a part of their like a regular engineering team there, but maybe apply newer computer science techniques. So maybe as a either a flight software engineer or a machine learning engineer there, where we like apply the smaller scale projects I'm working on into like the real world.
That's super cool. Maybe one more question, and you are to look at your current experience with Dr. Mahmood. What is sort of maybe one lecture or one um, course component, one experience that you take to be sort of especially memorable and um, or inspiring, or just like you had a lot of fun at? Could you like name a specific paper that you read that sort of really um, uh, sparked your interest?
Yep. So one of the papers we were looking at was called Hand to Face, which is basically where instead of using real data sets, the paper writers, the authors basically synthesize the data set by taking a bunch of random arms and a bunch of random faces and sticking them together. So it was like you could literally stick fake sunglasses on somebody and then use that to train a machine learning model to learn about the location of a occlusion. So like there were literally pictures where there was like a hand going across the face because they literally stuck two images together. And then building off of that, when we had our discussion in our meeting, we talked about how we could sort of implement that. And then also, it was really memorable to see her talk about how at the academic level they still use the same technology that we learn about in high level classes at school. So it was fun to get to learn about how sort of school is not just about learning stuff, but you can actually take that stuff away and sort of apply it. So it was memorable when we had a lecture on um, classifiers and feature extraction, which is sort of taking the features from an image, so like the lines, the shapes, and then sort of classifying that and building off of the hand to face gesture data set.
Super cool, and that's what we're hoping for, is for our students to experience um, like the higher level academic research that has sort of real world implications and applications, um, so that they come to see that school can be can be something that has
Yeah.
application in the real.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily. A lot of the stuff we end up learning still um, isn't, and that's all right too. Knowledge can be something you just like pursue for its own sake too. Um, but it's always good to hear that um, the experience helps you to ground your schoolwork in the real. Cool. So Ayush, is there anything else you would like to share about your experience, or that we haven't yet touched on, or about your experience with Dr. Mahmood before we just wrap?
Yeah, I would definitely say that every student should consider doing research of some kind, not just because research, the stuff you're working on is maybe cool, but because it's great to always put something out there that you work on. So if you're doing passion projects, I would consider trying to make those passion projects like a reality through research. And so, uh, I think the research is sort of undervalued, but for kids in our age, and I think it's great that people are starting to sort of look at research as not just a way to add to something, but just put your work out there so that people can see it. And if they want to build on top of it, they can build on
At CCIR, our slogan is
it.
actually to promote the practice and value of research.
Yeah.
So that's really at the heart of what we do. And to hear you say that, I'm not sure you know that that's our slogan. Did
Oh, I
you?
actually didn't know.
Yeah, so to hear you say that is quite heartening. It feels like we sort of came close to our mission here.
Mhm.
But that's fantastic. It was that just about wraps up this episode of the Student Spotlight. Thank you so much, Ayush, for joining us. This was a lot of fun.
Yep. Thank you for having me. It was great.